Hello and welcome to News Central Now on News Central Television. I'm Joe Hanson. Let's take a look at the top stories for this hour. Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima calls for action against climate change at UN General Assembly. South African Workers Union calls for release of detained #End Bad Governance activists in Nigeria. Trial of former top Malian government officials over controversial 2014 purchase of presidential jet and military equipment begins. Stay with us to get the details shortly. The news of this hour begins with updates on the 79th United Nations General Assembly in New York. Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima has addressed the United Nations General Assembly, calling for concerted efforts by world leaders to support peacekeeping operations. Shettima, who is representing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, also called for the expansion of the Security Council, calling for a permanent seat for Africa at the United Nations. The Vice President also stated that insecurity is driving people into hardship. On climate change, Shettima called for global efforts to mitigate climate change.
And roll back this threat. We cannot build durable societies with the threats of terrorism, banditry, and insurgency growing in our countries and regions. Indeed, violent extremism remains an existential threat to both national and international peace, security, and development. We are making concerted efforts to contain and roll back this threat. The high-level African counter-terrorism meeting hosted by Nigeria in April 2024 and its outcome, the Abuja Declaration, promises to provide solutions to the challenges presented by terrorists and insurgents. Climate change is a driver of insecurity, which also poses a veritable challenge to sustainable development. A few weeks ago, large areas of my country were inundated by seasonal flood waters, including one of our largest cities, Maiduguri, in the northeast. Other parts of Nigeria also experienced similar tragedies, occasioning the loss of lives and property. We need not remind ourselves to remain faithful to the implementation of the commitments that we all gave voluntarily at the various COP meetings. Failure to do so is merely to postpone the inevitable. No country is immune from the effects of climate change. It is better that we cooperate and collaborate to meet this ever-increasing challenge rather than remaining in our shells, waiting for the inevitable to happen. A common challenge requires a common solution.
Well, early on the news, our correspondent Bernard Akede joined us live from New York to give us update on the ongoing UN General Assembly.
What the Vice President Kashim Shettima said is nothing far from what I expected him to say. He highlighted some of the issues, most of the issues that Nigeria has been experiencing in the past few years. He talked about climate change, talked about global warming, he talked about AI, the scares and the fears that people are having with the artificial intelligence. He talked about the flooding that we recently experienced in Maiduguri. He talked about the insecurity in the Sahel and how it's affected Nigeria. But after talking about, besides talking about all the ills that the country is facing, he also talked about, the advantages that a country like Nigeria can bring to the table, joining other African leaders who spoke today, saying that it is time for African countries and developing countries to have a seat, a permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council. He basically explained that Nigeria is big enough. Nigeria has the economy now. Nigeria is the go-to country, and not just Nigeria, Africa is the go-to continent. He mentioned the population age of the African continent and how the youthful population of the continent can be an advantage, not just to Africans, but to the rest of the world. They used to say space is the new frontier. Now it is Africa. Every investor, everybody is coming down this way. And these are some of the things that the Vice President, His Excellency Kashim Shettima, did highlight. Interestingly, I would like to note that on his way out, after giving that, that long and interesting speech, we were able to catch up with him, and he obliged us just one question very quickly. I asked him that almost every African leader who has spoken today has clamored for Africa or African countries to get a seat, a permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council. And I asked him, I said, do you think now is the time? Everybody has asked for it. Do you think now is the time, and why? And he said, yes, now is the time. He answered that question in just 3 points. He said, now is the time because we have the numbers, we have the economy, and we have the future. He mentioned insecurity, he mentioned poverty, he mentioned issues with the economy. And remember that he also did say that, it's expected that the international community should still rally around to support African countries that are lagging behind in these particular places. To me, in the early hours of today, when I had conversations with Felicity and other anchors on our station this morning, I did say that it's about time that African countries began to source solutions to African problems. We've heard several notable speakers and African leaders say that, and even on our station, we've heard contributors say that the solution to Africa's problems lies in Africa by Africans. I was saying that I would hope that African leaders will not come back to the UN General Assembly again this year, cap in hand, seeking for debt relief, seeking for debt pardon, seeking for more aid from the Western world and from foreign countries. Now, he didn't categorically say that we should get more support, more supplies, more aid, but he did say that the developed countries should support in maybe not using the same terms, but he actually did say that they should not overlook the developing countries, that we still in one way or the other need support, we still need some hand-holding. But in all of that, I strongly still believe, and I stand by my words, it's about time for Africa to take charge of African issues. And if Africa does want a permanent seat at the Security Council, then we have to be seeking permanent solutions to our own problems.
Well, in the meantime, President of Sierra Leone, Julius Maada Bio, also pushed for Africa to be given permanent membership in the UN Security Council.
I've called for meaningful dialogue and led by example by visiting the head of state of Burkina Faso before Sierra Leone assumed the presidency of the United Nations Security Council in August 2024. We need to build bridges, and this requires the international community's commitment to working with the regions to implement dialogue-based, region-led.
Let's also tell you about other notable speeches from the presidents of South Africa, the United States, Brazil, and Turkey, who underscored the critical need for international collaboration and sustainable solutions. News Central's Chidima Ona reports.
At the 79th UN General Assembly, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the exclusion of Africa from key decision-making structure in the UN Security Council, calling for reform. Ramaphosa also highlighted South Africa's commitment to peace, security, and human rights.
Achieving and maintaining peace and security requires the collective will of the community of nations gathered here. 78 years since its formation, the structure of the United Nations Security Council remains largely unchanged. Africa and its 1.4 billion people remain excluded from its key decision-making structure. This cannot continue. The UN Security Council must be reformed as a matter of agency.
In his final address to the UN General Assembly as U.S. President, Joe Biden emphasized the urgent need for humanitarian assistance in war-torn regions. He called for renewed global partnerships, urging nations to collaborate in tackling climate change and addressing global inequality.
Our test is to make sure that the forces holding us together are stronger than those that are pulling us apart. That the principles of partnership that we came here each year to uphold can withstand the challenges. That the center holds once again. My fellow leaders, I truly believe we're at another inflection point in world history, where the choices we make today will determine our future for decades to come. Will we stand behind the principles that unite us? Will we stand firm against aggression? Will we end the conflicts that are raging today? We take on global challenges like climate change, hunger, and disease.
Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Brazil's President Inácio Lula da Silva delivered impassioned speeches on the ongoing humanitarian crisis, stressing the importance of diplomacy in conflict resolution. They called on the international community to collaborate on finding solutions to the world's most pressing challenges.
We are living in a time of growing anguish, frustration, tension, and fear. We are witnessing an alarming escalation of geopolitical disputes and strategic rivalries. 2023 holds the sad record of the highest number of conflicts since World War II. Over $90 billion have been mobilized with nuclear arsenals. These resources could have been used to finance the fight against hunger and climate change.
Our problem is with the oppressor and the oppression, just as it was 5 centuries ago. Everybody should know about this. We will always speak of the truth and speak of what's right and what's fair.
The discussions at the UNGA 79 highlighted a growing consensus among world leaders on the interconnectedness of today's challenges and the need for a cooperative action. As the Assembly continues, the focus remains on dialogue and the urgent call for a unified response to the global crisis we face. In Lagos for News Central, Chidinma Ona.
Underlying problem in the Israeli-Palestinian.
Away from the UN General Assembly, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria has increased the monetary policy rate, which sets the benchmark for interest rates from 26.75% to 27.25%, surpassing analysts and economics' expectations. CBN Governor Olayemi Cardoso announced the 50 basis point hike during a press conference on Tuesday following the committee's 297th meeting in Abuja. News Central's business correspondent Perpetua Fasami Peter interviewed analysts to gather their perspectives on the decision.
Raise the MPR by 50 basis points to 27.25%.
This announcement was a shock to many analysts and economists.
I think, what the market was expecting was a flat, change in the policy rate. But this that has happened is a surprise, to the market.
Continuing to raise hike rates, it's got to stop, because whilst you are doing that, first, you are not reducing money supply. And secondly, like you said, we are affecting businesses. Cost of borrowing is going to go up regardless of what you do. As soon as you hike rates, cost of borrowing will go up.
Though the rate hike may pose challenges for local businesses and production, it can also attract foreign investors seeking higher yields, especially as central banks in the US and UK ease policies.
You will find that Nigeria is now a more compelling market for those investments coming from abroad to look for higher yield on investment instruments. And that, to my mind, should support the stability and possibly the appreciation of our exchange rate. When a country understands how to make the best use of foreign portfolio investments, you can sustain those investments over a medium to long term in your economy, and they continue to help you to stabilize your currency.
Analysts unanimously argue that addressing Nigeria's inflation crisis requires a more structural approach beyond simply cutting interest rates.
Where hopefully, if we get it right with the introduction of Dangote into the picture with regards to refined petroleum products, we should see a significant reduction in the demand pressures on the dollar. So this is completely outside of the NPR thing and all of that. This is just something that we're talking about the exchange rate, and if we get that right, then we should see a reduction in inflation.
Well, I think two numbers come to mind for me when we talk about exchange rates. Number one is $7.3 billion. That is the amount that government officials have said that Nigeria will be able to save when we sell our crude oil in Naira to local refiners. A more compelling number for us to save on an annual basis going forward looks to me like that $20 billion, assuming that we can completely eliminate all form of oil-related importation. I think that will be more instructive and more supportive of our FX rate stability going forward.
The 297th meeting of the MPC also saw the committee hike MPR by 50 basis points to 27.25%, retain the asymmetric corridor around the MPR at plus 500 to minus 100, raise the cash reserve ratio of deposit money banks to 50% and that of merchant banks by 200 basis points to 16%. However, it retained the liquidity ratio at 30%. In Lagos, for News Central, I am Perpetua Fasami Peter.
The news continues shortly after this break. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. In the meantime, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has submitted an additional supplementary budget proposal for the Federal Capital Territory Administration for consideration and passage to the House of Representatives. The proposal was read by the Speaker of the House at the resumption of plenary after a 2-month annual recess embarked upon by lawmakers. President Tinubu says that an additional proposal is being prepared on the reviewed revenue and expenditure forecasts of the Federal Capital Territory Administration, which aligns with the fiscal and developmental policies of the federal government and will help the FCTA to prioritize and improve human development within the capital.
I write in accordance with the provisions of Section 121 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to forward herewith an additional supplementary budget proposal for the FCT for consideration and passage by the House of the Representatives. This supplementary budget proposal has been prepared on the basis of the FCT's reviewed revenue and expenditure forecast. While I trust that the House of Representatives will, in their usual expeditious manner, consider and approve the 2024 supplementary budget proposal of the FCTA, please accept, Right Honorable Speaker, the assurances of my highest considerations and regards. Yours sincerely, signed, Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Justice Binta Nyako of the Federal High Court in Abuja has recused herself from the trial of detained leader of the indigenous people of Biafra over charges bordering on treasonable felony. This followed the demand by the IPOB leader Nnamdi Kanu after he went on a tirade in court, insisting the trial judge should recuse herself from the trial. News Central's Emmanuel Bagudu reports.
It was a clash between the accused, the defense counsel, and the trial judge. The bone of contention here is that the proscribed IPOB leader says that he is not convinced that the court presided over by Justice Binta Nyako has the jurisdiction to try him, having been vindicated by the Supreme Court, which had earlier ruled that he should be tried in London, where he committed the alleged crime.
It says all these things are online. Is it not page 18? All these things are online. So I suggest that the journalists in this country actually take out time to do some basic research. It's not difficult, just minor research. You will understand the vacuousness, the emptiness of all the charges against me. They kept switching the charges. They said I committed this crime in England, isn't it? Yes.
Justice Nyako, who couldn't stand the protest scene created by the IPOB leader, announced her withdrawal from the trial.
The court did make some order, and the consequences of that order would have resulted in getting him adequately prepared. But most of those orders were disobeyed in their material particulars. For instance, we were not provided a clean room where no one will have listening devices to listen to our conversations.
The IPOB leader continued his agitations without mincing words, exonerating the IPOB group, saying it is not responsible for the fragile peace in the southern eastern part of the country.
Those of Biafra are trying to use my name to gain relevance. I don't want it. I don't want any killings, no kidnapping. All this nonsense are alien to us as a people. I don't know where these animals came from. They are taking advantage of the fact that I'm in detention. But it will soon end. It will soon end. On IPOB, trying to use the name of IPOB, trying to subvert the will of the people, our principles and our core values. That person has a lot to contend with when the time comes. You can run, but you can never hide. You can run and hide and be talking all manner of rubbish. but one day we will catch up with you.
For now, Kanu has been taken back to detention and his case file handed back to the chief judge. In Abuja, for News Central, I am Emmanuel Bagudu.
The All Progressive Congress has responded to Yaga Africa after the former alleged manipulations in the just concluded gubernatorial elections in Edo State. The Independent National Electoral Commission declared APC Monday Okpebolo winner of the keenly contested election. INEC said the APC candidate secured 291,667 votes, Ighodalo with 247,274 votes, while Akpata scored 22,763. Moments later, Yaga Africa released a communique saying the election failed the integrity test. In a statement by the National Publicity Secretary APC, Felix Moka, the party warned the civil society group to stay within its role as an observer, adding that the Independent National Electoral Commission was a sole body to declare the result. Justice James Omotosho of the Federal High Court in Abuja dismissed two separate motions on Tuesday filed by the Edo State government and the State House of Assembly seeking to overturn the reinstatement of Philip Shaibu as Deputy Governor of the state. The court also awarded a total cost of 400,000 naira against the Edo State government and the State Assembly. Justice Omotosho awarded the costs on the State Attorney General and the State Assembly in favor of Shaibu after the counsel for the State Attorney General Marvin Omorogbe and the House of Assembly Sonia Egbonia expressed their intention to withdraw the motions for a stay of execution. Traditional rulers from the southeast have convened in Umuahia, the Abia State capital, to discuss strategies for overcoming the region's security challenges and finding lasting solutions. The meeting held at the Joint Account and Allocation Committee building brought together the chairman of the Traditional Rulers Councils from all 5 southeast states. News Central's Chinwe Ugele reports.
As custodians of culture and key figures closest to the grassroots in the leadership hierarchy, the role of the traditional rulers in ensuring peace and stability in their communities cannot be overstated. At this gathering in Umuahia, the leadership of the traditional institution, represented by the various state councils, is expected to develop resolutions aimed at fostering peace and addressing the root causes of insecurity in the southeast. The recommendations from this gathering will be presented to key stakeholders in the region as a proposed solution to the ongoing crisis.
God bless all of us as we meet to discuss the progress and the development of the good people of Southeast Nigeria.
Governor Alex Oti, who officially opened the meeting, highlighted the vital role traditional rulers play in community development and nation building.
It's also important I will remind people who have been given the privilege to preside over the people that power is transient. If there's anything that lasts long, it's the traditional institution. If you are lucky as a governor and you have 2 terms, 8 years after, you are gone. So it's very important that you don't let power enter your head.
In his welcome address, the chairman of the Abia State Council of Traditional Rulers, Ezelinus Mba, emphasized the enormous responsibilities traditional leaders have in their domains. Efforts aimed at restoring peace and allowing displaced individuals to return to their communities affected by criminal activities would be a much-needed relief for the people.
In recent times, the Southeast has become bedeviled with so many problems. Top among the list is security issues, which has driven a lot of locals out of their communities. Hopefully, this meeting will find a lasting solution to the problem and foster peace in the region. In Umuahia for News Central, Chinwe Ugele.
Nigeria's Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative says that about 16.25 trillion naira was lost to crude oil theft between 2009 and 2020. This was as they spoke to newsmen in Abuja as part of preparations for the annual general meeting of the Publish What You Pay Nigeria Coalition, which aims to stem corruption in the nation's extractive sector. News Central Joshua Marayi has more in this report.
The Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative reports that between 2009 and 2020, the nation lost about 619.7 million barrels of oil, worth 16.25 trillion naira, due to crude oil theft. The initiative further revealed that the nation lost about 4.2 billion liters of petroleum products from refineries, valued at $1.84 billion between 2009 and 2018. This the initiative blames on corruption, saying it impacts negatively on the nation's development. With this in mind, pro-transparency experts have converged on Abuja as part of the Publish What You Pay Alliance to deliberate on improving transparency and accountability in the extractive sector.
In ensuring transparency in the extractive sector, there is the need to understand that there is this supply side and there is the demand side. The meeting here is coming to set the agenda for their general meeting to ensure that there is collectivity, there is inclusivity, and that the people can speak with one accord on behalf of 200 million Nigerians.
We need to be deliberate about demanding accountability, which is the demand side, of transparency, and so that we can keep the government on their toes, ensure that they supply us the kind of information we do. And then we also need to educate citizens, because when you have citizens buy in, it is easier for civil society to push these issues. And then because citizens understand what they need, you now use civil society as a vehicle to get government to address these issues.
They urge government to consider reports submitted by NATI and eradicate corruption in the nation's extractive sector.
Nigeria needs to step in more, look at all the necessary conventions, look at areas where IET make recommendations so that we can be able to improve upon what we are doing, even in the accountability of even the little revenue that was generated in the extractive industry. That is in fiscal responsibility. Nigeria needs to do more on that area.
The annual general meeting of the coalition will seek to evaluate the progress made by Nigeria's extractive industry. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarayi.
When we come back from the break, we'll take a look at the new minimum wage Abia State government set to begin implementation. Welcome back. There are indications that the Abia State government will commence the payment of the new minimum wage in October 2024. Commissioner for Information, Oke Kanu, made this known during a press briefing on the resolutions of the State Executive Council. This long-awaited news has been welcomed by workers across the state. News Central's Chinwe Ogile reports. Report in our subsequent news bulletin. But let's move on now.
On July 25, 2024, the federal government and organized labor reached an agreement on a new minimum wage of 70,000 naira. However, 2 months after the pronouncement, the implementation of the wage structure remains pending across most states in the country. The announcement by the Commissioner for Information, Oke Kanu, setting a date for the commencement of payments in Abia has been met with cautious optimism by workers.
Barring any unforeseen circumstances, Abia State government will commence the payment of minimum wage to its workers from the month of October. This, in part, is to underscore the government's commitment to the welfare of Abia workers and the fulfillment of the promise of His Excellency.
For the civil servants in Abia State, it is all about fulfillment of the promise made by the governor himself on the Workers' Day.
I'm pleased to inform you that we shall take the lead in implementation as soon as a new national wage is agreed. Once we are through, we will not only implement it, but we will also backdate it and pay you arrears.
However, the commissioner was unable to confirm whether the governor will pay arrears, leaving workers uncertain about what to expect by the end of October.
Well, quite unfortunate to date, we as civil servants have not seen anything until this month that we heard that he said that he's going to pay the 70,000 minimum wage.
The lack of clarity has left many in suspense, but workers remain optimistic that the government will not only meet but exceed expectations.
Expect the same 70,000 naira from the federal government's approval, and I know he may even add more. He may even add more than that, because seeing that young man as a governor, he liked doing something above or doing something different from what others have been.
I believe if they even give the 70 that they promised, it will be a big relief. Anything less than that it amounts to not helping the masses.
When contacted for comments, the Abia State chairman of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Omonayo Okoro, said he was attending a national-level meeting in Bauchi on the modalities for the payment of the minimum wage and was unavailable for an interview at the time.
Expectedly, everyone who works as a civil servant in Abia State Civil Service will receive what is due to him or her in due course. In Omahia for News Central, Chinwe Ugele.
The news continues in South Africa, where the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa says they are worried about Nigeria's government's target on activists. The union has written a petition to the Nigerian High Commissioner to South Africa, Haruna, Manta, calling for the Nigerian government to end harassment and persecution of critics of its policies. The union says the government of Nigeria has been targeting activists who mobilized in August 2024 under the banner #EndBadGovernance to protest hunger, economic and social crisis in Nigeria and increasingly trade unions. They also demand the urgent release of all those arrested concerning the #EndBadGovernance protest who still languish in detention without charge in Abuja and others still held by the police in different parts of the country. Well, joining me from Gauteng, South Africa, to speak more on this is the President of General Industries Workers Union of South Africa, Mametlwe Sebei. I hope I got that pronunciation correctly, but welcome and thank you for being here.
Pleasure to be here, as always.
Great. Can you provide some background on the circumstances that led to GIWUSA drafting and submitting this petition regarding the Nigerian government's treatment of activists?
Well, I mean, we have learned with extreme shock the level of repression with which, the Nigerian government had responded to the protests on #EndBadGovernance. The fact that a number of people have been killed across Nigeria, the fact that over 1,000 activists, including journalists, have been detained in Nigeria, but also just brutalization, which led to injury of so many people who stood for nothing but protesting just the escalating cost of living, the deepening levels of hunger that has reduced vast layers of the Nigerian society to levels of pauperism in one of the most oil-richest countries in the world. And we are saying that is just unacceptable. The demands of the protesters are absolutely legitimate, and that's the reason that we have written to the High Commission of Nigeria here to protest that treatment. And we are saying that if they do not hit our call, we intend to protest, because an injury to the working class and young people of Nigeria who are fighting for the future of their country, for the future of themselves and their families and their communities, is an injury to us. The working class movement is founded on the principles of international working class solidarity, and we remain firm on that their injury is our injury. We stand by them, we will protest this here, and of course, escalate it everywhere else.
All right, but why do you think it is particularly important for South Africa to raise concerns about the Nigerian government's actions against activists, and why now?
The people in Nigeria are our people. How can we have a situation wherein We have lots of Nigerian people being forced out of their country and all over the world. Today, the name Nigeria has come to be associated with all the wrong things, right? Because a lot of people forced by the levels of horrific poverty in Nigeria are now forced into, activities that have tarnished the good name of the proud people of Nigeria. We have had a situation here in South Africa where a young person who joined a pageant for a Mrs. South Africa was excluded by an outrageous xenophobic campaign that unfortunately has to do with the fact that the name of Nigeria has become tarnished because of the mismanagement of that country by its elite, which is corrupt, but also an elite that has, of course, plundered Nigeria, which is very rich. I mean, the fact that the price of fuel in an oil-producing country has increased just by 700% in the past few months is outrageous, and especially in a context where they are not implementing a national, minimum wage promise that they made of 70,000 rand naira, if I'm not mistaken. And we think that even that is pitiful. But if they could implement that, I mean, that will obviously be a step forward, just as we ourselves here in South Africa are demanding the same. Repression is not a solution. We want justice for the people of Nigeria. Their struggle is our struggle. But more than that, the fact that, people are forced to abandon their country for a life elsewhere in the world. I think for me, that is shameful, that is scandalous, and that is a call for that government of Nigeria to be taken out of power insofar as I'm concerned.
All right, Mr. Sebei, have you in any way gotten any feedback from Mr. Haruna Manta or the Nigerian High Commission since submitting the petition, and what are your expectations regarding their response?
Well, few things. One is that we tried to submit it, but all the emails are just, returning it and so on. So I intend to hand it in person, as I've instructed also the union officials yesterday to do everything to ensure that it reaches him. But we're also intending to escalate it to South African government and say that they need to exert pressure. We want withdrawal of all the charges against the protesters. We want justice for all those that have been arrested and brutalized in whatever manner. And we want to see also issues being addressed there, but also we are not having illusions in South African government ourselves. And we think that this is government that is as guilty of the same policies that have impoverished Nigeria, that are impoverishing South African working class, that are impoverishing the masses of the African working class everywhere, as we have seen similar protests and demonstrations in Kenya and quite a number of African countries. But also, the cost of living crisis is a reality across the world, is a crisis of global capitalism and world imperialism that we say need to be overthrown. We want different Nigeria. We want socialist Nigeria. We want socialist South Africa and a socialist Africa in the world.
Anyway, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. You've made very valid points here. President of the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa, Mr. Sebei, thank you for being here on News Now.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
We'll go on a quick break. When we come back, we have more news. Stay with us. And we do have breaking news at this moment. Primary school teachers under the edges of the local education authority in Abuja are currently demonstrating over unpaid arrears of 25 months. The teachers who early embarked on an indefinite strike are lamenting the deafening silence of the relevant authorities in charge of the payment. Now, this was a 40-day ultimatum that was indeed given. The ultimatum that Nigerian Union of Teachers, NUT FCT chapter, issued to the 6 area councils in the territory. And as we speak now, the unpaid arrears primary school teachers have occupied AMAC over unpaid arrears of 25 months. We do have our man who's on ground currently. He's on standby. Joshua Marayi joins me. Joshua, if you can hear me, can you give us a full detail of what's really happening right there in the Federal Capital Territory? Well, Joshua, I want to believe that you can hear me. Can you tell us what's happening? What's the when did they embark on this strike? Or better still, we could see teachers out there with placards. What's really happening? Give us a full detail if you can.
Currently, we are at the Amak Municipal Area Council in Abuja, where the currently teachers under the aegis of the National Union of Teachers, the Abuja chapter, are protesting, particularly demonstrating. They use the word demonstrating to express their grievances over 25 months unpaid allowance, unpaid arrears backlog, and they are here, and I have here with me one of the teachers who, as you can see, the chairman of the Abuja Municipal Area Council just walked in, and you can see the reactions from the protesting teachers. The car that just entered the Abuja Municipal Area Council is the chairman of the area council. And currently we have with me here Comrade Paul, who is the deputy chairman of the Nigerian Union of Teachers here in Abuja. Comrade Paul, can you tell us what you are protesting for? Look at the camera, look at the camera.
Yes, even as you can see us, we are here to express our displeasure over what the area council chairman is doing to us. The primary school teachers are being neglected. They are being relegated to the background. The primary school teachers, they are dying. The primary school teachers are not being taken good care of. And that's why we are here. It will interest you to know that there are 40% increase that has been given, has not even been implemented, not to talk of the arrears. The recent 25% increase again that has just been given, only primary school has not been given. Their counterparts in UB, in senior secondary schools, have been given. Now, not to talk about the minimum wage arrears of 2019.
Not Donald Trump.
It has been there. They have not given them.
Okay.
Want to appreciate the Honorable Minister of FCT, who has paid, agreed to help the area councils, and he paid 40%. And he said the remaining 60%, the area councils should go and pay. But as I'm talking to you now, none of the area council chairman have paid a dime.
Okay, now to get you clear, now most of the teachers here are under what salary grade?
They are still in that compass. Yes.
What is the salary grade of the compass teachers here?
From 7 to 17 or whatever, and here to 16. That is another issue, that even now the primary schools are being treated differently with their counterparts in UBE. Now, they don't progress to the directorate cadre.
Okay, now I want to understand you. Before now, has any communication been maintained with the relevant authorities, particularly the area council chairman, and what is their response, if any response was given to you?
Very well then. We have given an ultimatum for 2 weeks, nothing was done. And that is why we call on this suspended strike, and we resume it, and for that 2 weeks, nothing was done. That's why we have resumed the strike. And it is now 1 week. 1 week, we have not received any tangible something that will tell me that our teachers will get food at their table. And that's why we are here, so that the whole world will know that the teachers are not being treated well. And that's why we used to sing, we teach them they should not cheat us. And that's why we are here. You can see all the inscription pointing at what their demands are.
Okay, now, for instance, you do not get a reply today or subsequently. What is the next course of action?
Yes, the next action, God will lead us. We'll know what to do.
Well, you heard from Comrade Paul Atikinkpam. Comrade Paul is the deputy chairman of the Nigerian Union of Teachers Association here in Abuja, and they currently besiege the Abuja Municipal Area Council, where they are demonstrating over their unpaid arrears of 25 months. And earlier on, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, particularly the man of Jason Wike, paid them over 40% and instructed the area council chairman to pay the rest. Now, this is their grievances, and they are complaining that no attention has been given to them, no response from the chairman, and they are here besieging the gates of the Abuja Municipal Area Council in Abuja.
Well, thank you so much, Imarayi, for covering that. It's happening now live in Abuja, and we'll definitely circle back to you to get more information on what's going on. Well, before we wrap up the news, let's quickly tell you that former ministers and high-ranking military officials in Mali stood trial on Tuesday. They've been accused of embezzling millions in a controversial 2014 purchase of a presidential jet and military equipment. The $14 million deal, coupled with the procurement of arms without competitive bidding, sparked international outrage and prompted the IMF to suspend funding to Mali. This case underscores the corruption allegations that Mali's military rulers used to justify their 2020 coup. Among the accused is former defense minister, one known as Sumeliu Bubwe Maiga, and the one who actually died in prison in 2022, and the former finance minister, Buhari Fili Sissoko. Miaga's supporters hold the junta responsible for his death, while other officials involved face charges of fraud and nepotism. That's all the news we have for you this hour. Before we go, a quick look at some of the major stories. Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima calls for action against climate change at UN General Assembly. South African Workers Union are calling for release of detained #End Bad Governance activists in Nigeria. And trial of former top Malian government officials of a controversial 2014 purchase of presidential jet and military equipment has begun. Do follow us on all socials. We are at News Central TV and watch us live on DSTV channel 422 Star Times, channel 274, Avo TV, and stream live as well on YouTube. I'm Joe Hanson. Many thanks for watching. Stay with us. More programs coming your way.